Good morning. This is John from the Springs Mennonite Church, and I'm here today to continue talking about this man named David. Now, the last time we talked, David had said he was sorry for what he did. Weren't quite sure how sorrowful he was. Made it look a little less sincere than what you would expected. But between that point in what was that 2 Samuel 12 and today 2 Samuel 22, a lot of things have happened in David's life. He's had a lot of battles. Even his own son Absalom revolted against him, and he had to run in fear from his own son. Ultimately Absalom is killed. David weeps and is so sad that his son died, and it seems like he has now reached the point where he's where God wanted him to be. 2 Samuel 22. The first few verses we read this. David sang this song to the Lord on the day the Lord rescued him from all his enemies and from Saul. Let me stop there and say, I wish I knew the tune that he sang. I'd like to sing it too, but I don't know that, so I'll just have to read it for you. He sang, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my Savior. My God is my rock in whom I find protection. He is my shield, the power that saves me, and the place of safety. He is my refuge, my Savior, the one who saves me from violence. I called on the Lord who is worthy of praise, and he saved me from all my enemies. The waves of death overwhelmed me, the floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death Death laid a trap in my path. But in my distress, I cried out to the Lord. Yes, I cried to my God for help. And he heard me from his inner sanctuary. My cry reached his ears." In this little bit of the psalm, you get an idea of who David has become, a man after God's own heart. And that, of course, is what has made him the greatest king in all of Israel. Yeah, he did a lot of bad things. Yeah, he did a lot of good things. But after all of the struggles, eventually he got to the point where God wanted him to be. And he starts out by saying, "The Lord is my rock, my fortress, my Savior, my rock in whom I find protection." So let's just stop there a second. What has transformed David? Is it circumstances? Well, to some degree, yeah. Is it victories in battle, which he has had? Yeah, that's true. But what's really transformed David is he's come to understand who God is. Now, that's a lesson for you and for me. And many of you who are listening to me may not yet know who God is, but that's okay. David really didn't either for quite a while of his life, but he finally got it together towards the end. And you and I can get it together whether we're towards the end or not. He talks about how God is his shield, his power. I'd like to just ask you, who is your shield? Who do you ultimately depend on? Is it yourself? Is it your neighbors? Is it your title in life, your education, your material things? All of that stuff disappears when you die. I I've, I find it strange that people who know life doesn't go on forever spend so much of their life building, accumulating things that don't go on forever either. If you think about it just logically, you'd come up with a better plan. David came up with that plan. He found God who was all he needed and everything he needed. And he goes on to say here towards the end of it, he says, the waves of death overwhelmed me. Floods of destruction swept over me. The grave wrapped its ropes around me. Death laid a trap for my path. You hear what he's saying here? He's saying life got awful. So much so, he thought he was going to die. Have you been in a place where life got awful? Maybe right now for you, life is awful. And maybe you're at a place where you think you're going to die, or you think it's over, whatever that means. And if you are at that place, it's okay. Because David was in the same place. But what does he say? He doesn't stay there. He doesn't wallow there. He doesn't give up there. What does he say? But in my distress, not afterwards, not prior to, but in the middle of that distress, I cried out to the Lord. And yes, he heard my cry. In the midst of life, when things don't seem to be going the way you had hoped, the way you planned, or the way you would have liked, in the midst of that, that's where you'll find God. You don't have to solve all your problems before you come to Him. You don't have to figure everything out. You don't have to settle all the scores. All you have to do, as David did, is cry out to Him for help. And it says that He heard me in His inner sanctuary. The creator of this universe heard me, according to David. And He'll hear you too. He says, my cry reached His ear. You know, knowing that God cares is essential to a healthy and wholesome life. You can get a substitute for that, but it's a poor substitute. And it won't last. Only a heart entrenched in the love and grace of God is going to last. So I leave you today. Are you like David at this point in 2 Samuel 22? Or are you somewhere else in your journey? We can learn from this man. He has a lot of good stuff to tell us. Well, I'll be back next time. One more story about David, and then we'll move on to another topic. Thank you so much for listening. Hope you have a fantastic day. If you have a need or a concern, let us know. We'll do whatever we can as fast as we can to help meet your need. Thanks for listening. God bless you. I'll talk to you again.